Hello, buddy. Welcome back to Tin Man's Core Channel. I'm your host, Jeffrey Tin Man Taylor, and today I'm reacting to my third and final Midnight Tales video for you guys. And this is titled Six Disturbing True Movie Theater Horror Stories. So without further ado, I'm going to turn these lights off, move the camera up here for you guys, and let's get this reaction on the road and in the bag, shall we? Okay, here we go.
Back when I was 22, I was fresh out of college, newly married, and flat broke. My husband and I didn't have the luxury of a real honeymoon or fancy dinners, so going to the movies became our go-to escape.
Okay.
It was affordable, simple, and honestly one of the few things we could enjoy together without worrying about money.
You got that right, because it seems like it's a cheaper date night thing to do instead of booking a trip to another state or even another country, because your money would just going out the window right there. And it gets pricier every year, seems like. But with going to the movie theater, you could just buy a movie ticket, get a bucket of popcorn and drinks, and you'll be satisfied.
I was working a crappy retail job at the time, and he was juggling school and part-time work, so any break from the daily grind felt like gold. That summer, a huge superhero movie was premiering, one of those big-budget, action-packed blockbusters that everyone had been hyping up for months. I remember we were both exhausted that Thursday. I'd pulled a long shift, he had finals coming up, but we figured, why not?
Yeah, you might as well go and enjoy yourself, because you're working a hard shift and your husband has finals in a part-time job. You might as well go and enjoy yourself every once in a while when you get a chance. But also, if it's a superhero movie, I like going to see those. I remember back when me and my folks used to go to the movies to see like the Marvel and DC films. That I was always hyped, and everybody that went to go see it was hyped and almost jumping out of their seats. I mean, a superhero movie would just get you energized every time you see a big action sequence go down.
Let's do something spontaneous and catch the midnight premiere. We got to the theater around 11, grabbed a bucket of popcorn and drinks, and picked seats near the middle of the auditorium. Good view, not too close or too far. The place was buzzing. People were chatting, laughing, taking selfies in superhero t-shirts. There was this electric energy, the kind that makes you forget how tired you are. When the lights finally dimmed and the previews ended, I remember leaning over and whispering to my husband, "Totally worth it." He smiled and squeezed my hand. About 15 minutes into the movie, something strange happened. I saw a guy in the front row stand up and quietly slip out through the emergency exit near the screen. I only noticed because that door let in a weird flash of light from outside, and it kind of stuck out. At the time, I didn't think much of it. Maybe he just needed to take a call or grab something from his car. Not long after, that same door burst open again.
You know, I would be wondering that myself, because that would be kind of strange, but it ain't my business. But then I'd be wondering, why was he going out and coming back in? But let's just see what happens, shall we?
And I swear, everything after that moment feels like a blur. There was a loud pop, like a firecracker going off, but sharper. People paused, confused. Then came another pop, and another, faster this time. Screaming erupted. I turned toward the front just in time to see smoke billowing out into the rows, and a figure in black standing there. It was the same guy who had walked out earlier, but now he was wearing a gas mask, black body armor, and carrying a gun. At first, it didn't register. My brain refused to believe it was real. I thought it had to be some kind of sick publicity stunt for the movie.
No, it ain't no stunt for the movie. You need to get up with your husband and leave the movie theater before you get shot by this crazy individual.
Then someone a few seats down collapsed, and blood sprayed across the aisle. That's when reality hit. The theater exploded into chaos. People started shoving, climbing over each other, ducking behind seats. My husband yelled at me to get down, and we dove to the floor, crawling beneath the row in front of us. He covered me with his body. I could hear bullets hitting the seats, the walls, the floor. I could smell the gas. tear gas, I later learned, and it burned my eyes, my throat, my lungs. It was impossible to breathe or think. I felt something wet on my leg and realized my husband had been hit. He was still shielding me, whispering for me to stay down, but his voice was strained. I looked at his thigh and saw blood soaking through his jeans, pooling beneath him. I tried to help, press down on the wound, stop the bleeding, but I was shaking so badly I could barely function. People were screaming, crying, trampling over each other in blind panic. Some tried to run toward the exits, others froze in place. The shooter was just walking slowly down the aisle, firing into the rows, like he was hunting. Eventually, someone near the emergency exit managed to get it open again, and people started flooding out. My husband pushed me toward the door. He could barely stand, but he was more concerned about me than himself. I wrapped my arm around him, and together we stumbled out into the parking lot. There were people everywhere, some lying on the ground, some dragging the injured, others just sobbing or staring blankly into space.
Okay, that really makes me mad. Everybody's there at the movie theater to have a good time and watch a movie, but it only takes one messed up lunatic to cause a major massacre and make everything go bad for the people. I'm thinking he's probably an ex-military guy that lost it in the head. I mean, how else can you explain where he got the gas mask and body armor and all the tear gas and guns? But thank God they got out of there quickly before they were shot to death.
A group of construction workers from the site across the street rushed over when they heard the commotion. They helped carry my husband to the curb and used their shirts to stop the bleeding. I remember one of them asking me my name and how long he'd been shot, but I could barely answer. I was just staring at my husband's leg and thinking, please don't die. Please don't die. Paramedics arrived fast. They loaded him into an ambulance and rushed him to the hospital. I rode with him, still holding his hand, trying not to fall apart. The aftermath was surreal. The shooter, it turned out, had planned this. He'd bought a ticket, entered the theater like everyone else, then propped the emergency exit open so he could come back in dressed in full tactical gear. He had multiple weapons, smoke bombs, gas canisters, and more ammo than I could even wrap my head around. He opened fire with zero emotion, just methodically moved through the crowd, shooting whoever was in his path. 12 people were killed that night. 70 others were injured, including my husband. The bullet had shattered the bone in his leg so badly that they couldn't save it. He ended up having it amputated from the knee down. I remember sitting in the hospital hallway after surgery, just staring at the floor, unable to comprehend what had happened. We were supposed to be watching a movie. That was it. Eventually, the shooter was caught alive. He didn't resist, didn't say anything. He just sat there like none of it mattered. We had to sit through the trial months later, and I had to look him in the eye while they read off every name, every injury, every second of that nightmare. He was sentenced to life plus thousands of years. I guess that's justice, but it never really felt like enough. Life after that changed completely. My husband had to learn how to walk again with a prosthetic. He had nightmares, so did I. Loud noises still make me jump. I haven't been back to a movie theater since that night, and I don't think I ever will. The idea of sitting in a dark room surrounded by strangers just sends my anxiety through the roof. People always say, "You were so lucky to survive." And yeah, I get it. I know how close I was to dying. But the truth is, survival doesn't always feel like a victory. Sometimes it feels like carrying the weight of a story that should have never happened.
I am so sorry your husband lost his leg and had to learn how to walk with a prosthetic one now. But I am furious that they just gave the shooter life in prison. I would just give him death penalty because it just seems like he didn't have a care in the world. He didn't care who he was shooting at. He just wanted to harm people that night. And I feel bad that they don't want to go back to a movie theater now because of this a-hole's decision of harming innocents while watching a superhero movie. This is why when you go to a movie theater, they always got security checking to see how old you are and making sure they're not carrying any weapons now because of incidents like this. Movie theater is supposed to be a safe place to go to and have a good time watching a movie, but now become an easy target for gung-ho individuals. I'm just sorry that this happened to this couple on this particular night. They just went in there to enjoy a movie and relieve stress from their day-to-day lives, and then this had to happen. My thoughts and good prayers go to the families of the ones that lost their lives. So let's get on to story number 2, shall we?
I was 14 at the time, and my mom had just started letting me go out with friends without tagging along. For the first time ever, I got to be dropped off at the theater with 2 of my best friends. No adults, no supervision, and we were all feeling a little too grown up for our own good. We were going to see the new Jumanji movie, which I had actually already seen once, but I didn't care. It was more about the freedom and the snacks than the movie itself. This was before assigned seating, so we picked our own spots. Naturally, we picked the back row like every group of teens does.
First of all, I know that must sound thrilling that you get to go to the movie theater by yourself with friends instead of having adults coming with you to chaperone. But I would do the same thing too, go to the movie theater and sit in the back seat because I don't want to be like either in the middle or towards the front and have somebody just breathe heavily on the back of my neck or kick my seat, you know.
Not only did it feel cool, but we figured we'd be less likely to bother anyone with our whispering and giggling. The theater wasn't packed, just a handful of small groups scattered around, mostly other teens and a few adults. We settled in with our candy and drinks, and everything was normal until just before the movie started. That's when this guy walked in. He came in last, after the trailers had already started rolling, and something about him caught my attention. Not in a scared way at first, just enough for me to notice. He was probably in his late 20s or early 30s. White guy, reddish hair, kind of scruffy looking, had a ball cap and jeans on. What stood out the most was that he walked all the way up the stairs and sat right in front of us. Not just in our row, but right in front of my friend sitting in the middle, even though there were a ton of empty seats everywhere else. That was the first time I felt weird about him. I tried to focus on the movie once it started, but this guy made it impossible. Every few minutes, he'd take his hat off, then put it back on facing the other way. At first, I thought he was just fidgety or restless.
No, something's up. If he keeps on taking his hat off and on, moving his head, and he's sitting right in front of your friend, that's a little off. Like he's planning to do something to one of y'all in the theater while the movie's playing. But I don't know. I'm just guessing at the moment, so let's just see what happens next.
But then I noticed every time he did it, he'd turn his head just enough to look right at us. And then he'd smile. Not like a friendly smile either, but one of those tight-lipped, unnerving ones that makes your skin crawl. He kept doing it over and over, and sometimes he'd even let out this quiet little laugh, like he was sharing some private joke with himself. Eventually, his behavior got even stranger. He started reacting way too hard to random moments in the movie. Like, if someone made a joke on screen, he'd throw his head back and howl, laughing, way louder than anyone else. Then he'd whip around and make eye contact with one of us, always staring, like he was trying to make sure we saw him enjoying himself. At one point, he even stood up, twisted around to face us completely, grinned wide like a creep, and then just sat back down like it was nothing. I wasn't even paying attention to the movie anymore. I was too focused on him, on what he was going to do next.
Sounds like this person just broke out of a mental asylum, it seems like, because the way he's acting, he's a complete nutcase. And I don't blame him because I would like to see what this guy plans on doing next because I can't pay attention to a movie if somebody acts that crazy like that.
One of my friends grabbed my arm and whispered my name. I didn't even need to ask why. We were all feeling the same thing. This guy wasn't just weird, he was watching us, and not in a casual glance kind of way. He was actively trying to make us uncomfortable, and it was working. We knew we had to do something. I didn't want to rely on the theater employees because, to be honest, this place wasn't exactly known for its helpful staff. I figured if we needed help, the best option was to find a group of women in the bathroom and ask them to stay near us until we could call my mom. I leaned in and whispered to both my friends, "As soon as the credits roll, we're heading to the bathroom. Don't talk, don't stop, just go." Sure enough, the moment the movie ended and the lights started to come up, we slipped out of our seats and started making our way down the steps as quickly and quietly as we could. I was the last one out of the row, and for some reason, maybe fear, maybe curiosity, I stopped and looked back. The guy was crawling around on his hands and knees in our row, looking under the seats. I remember just freezing for a second because it was so surreal. He didn't even look like a person at that point, just this unsettling, scuttling shape moving in the shadows. Then, like something out of a nightmare, he popped his head up and locked eyes with me. His eyes were wide open, too wide, and then he ran toward me. I didn't think, I just ran. I remember almost slipping on the carpet as I tried to turn the corner, sprinting down the hallway toward the women's bathroom. It was a few theaters down and felt like it was a mile away. One of my friends was already holding the door open, looking around frantically for me. I didn't even see where the other one went until later. Once we were inside, we found a quiet corner near the stalls and tried to calm down. I asked where our other friend had gone, and the one with me said she darted off toward the concession stand, hoping to find an employee. That honestly might have been the smarter choice.
Yeah. Even though you think that the employees around there don't give a darn, they probably might be brave enough to go confront that dude. But that is crazy that he would crawl on his hands and knees on the aisle that they were on like he was a dog. That's kind of disgusting. He's probably smelling their scent left behind in the chairs. Ugh.
But knowing this theater, I wasn't sure she'd find anyone. At least in the bathroom, we were surrounded by other people. It felt safer. A few minutes passed, and we decided to peek out and see if the coast was clear. That's when I saw him again, pacing back and forth outside the women's restroom, clearly looking for someone. When he saw me peek around the corner, he stared right at me, like he knew I was trapped. I'll never forget the expression on his face. He looked angry, really angry. We called my mom, both of us trying to explain through panicked breaths what was happening. She immediately said she'd be there in minutes and told us to stay where we were. A little while later, we peeked again, and he was gone. Our other friend was near the front of the theater, standing next to an employee. Apparently, she saw the guy pacing around and didn't say anything to the worker, just kind of stayed close by until he left. Eventually, my mom pulled up, and we ran straight to her car. We told her everything, and the part that still irritates me to this day is how she tried to downplay it. She said maybe he thought we were pretty, or that we might have misread the situation.
Are you kidding me, Mom? He won't think it like that. He's a creep. Your daughter and friends were running for their lives because of this dude, and you think that he was looking at him because he assumed that they were pretty? No, he wanted to do something else with him, and it wasn't going to be good. Cannot believe this.
But no, we didn't. That man wasn't being flirty. He was being predatory. And I've never forgotten how it felt to be 14, stuck in a dark theater, knowing someone was watching me for all the wrong reasons. I'm a petite blonde girl, and this happened when I was 15, back in my freshman year of high school. I had this friend named Gino, who honestly felt more like a protective older brother than anything else. He was 2 grades ahead of me, on the football team, and had that kind of presence where people usually didn't mess with him. Anyway, it was a Thursday night, and he hit me up asking if I wanted to grab food and catch a movie later. Since he had a few errands to run after school, we agreed I'd meet him at the theater around 6:30. and then we'd figure out dinner from there. My mom dropped me off at the theater right on time, and just as I was texting Gino to say I'd arrived, he messaged saying he was running late and would be there in about 20 minutes. So I just sat down on one of those metal benches outside, scrolling through my phone and waiting. This burger joint had just opened nearby, and I could still smell the fryer oil in the air. A couple minutes go by, and this guy, mid-30s, tall brown hair, dressed like he just left some office, walks up to me and asks, "You look a little lost. Are you okay?" I looked up, a little caught off guard, but I told him I was just waiting for someone. I figured he'd move on. Nope. Instead, he starts chatting with me like we're at some networking event, asking where I go to school, if I live around here. Just really unnecessary questions for a random adult to ask a teenage girl.
Yeah, don't give him no information. It just seems like he thinks you're an easy person to talk to probably convince to follow him somewhere. That's what I'm thinking right now. Oh man, I hope her friend from school hurries up and gets there, just so he can be by her side and perturb that other dude to walk away. But I tell you, every time you go to the movie theater, you never know, there might be some creeps hanging around there to bother the heck out of you.
He tells me he's the manager at that new burger place and asks if I'm interested in a part-time job. I already thought that was sketchy, but I politely said I had something else lined up already. But then he starts pushing it, saying he could give me an interview right now. And when I asked where that would even happen, he said, "Behind the restaurant. It's too crowded inside." I remember thinking, like, what? You want me, a teenage girl, to go behind a building with you for a fake job interview?
Yeah, no, don't do it. You should listen to your senses because that seems sketchy. People will usually do a job interview when there's multiple people around, but this guy seems like he wants to get you away from any peering eyes and kidnap you, probably.
I tried to shut it down again, but instead of backing off, he starts going on about how he's actually from a different city and staying nearby with some friends, and then invites me to go to a party with them that night and maybe stay the weekend. I was stunned. The job story instantly fell apart, and now it was just plain creepy. I told him straight up that I was 15 and not interested. Didn't faze him at all. He just kept going, telling me to tell my mom I was sleeping at a friend's house and that I should come meet his buddies waiting in the parking lot. At this point, I was standing up, trying to distance myself from him, mentally going over my options. There were people around, but no one seemed to be paying attention, which was honestly the most frustrating part. He started getting more aggressive too, more insistent that I go with him. I mumbled something like, "I think my friend just got here," and started to walk off, and that's when he grabbed my wrist. Like full on grabbed me and started pulling me toward the lot while still talking like this was no big deal. Right then, Gino, like some kind of miracle, walked up. He immediately noticed what was happening and came over asking what was going on. The guy let go of me fast, suddenly all defensive, asking, "Who's this?" And I panicked and just said, "My boyfriend." Gino didn't even blink, just stepped between us and started pressing the guy with, "What the hell do you want with her?" The guy didn't stick around to argue. He gave me one last angry look and stormed off toward the back of the burger place. Gino asked if I wanted him to go after the guy, but honestly I was shaken and just wanted to pretend it didn't happen for a bit and enjoy the movie. We never saw the guy again, and I never told my mom because I didn't want her to freak out. But looking back, it makes me sick to think what could have happened if Gino hadn't shown up, or if I had been just a little more trusting that day. I still remember the way the guy's tone shifted when I said no, like he was just waiting to snap.
Yeah, thank God you did not find out what was going to happen, because once you said no and he said, "Yes, you are coming with me," and he grabbed onto you, that gives you a sign like he ain't going to take no for an answer. He wants you to come with him and probably use you for ransom for kidnapping or sex trafficking. But thank God her friend Gino showed up and got him to let go of her, and he wandered off thinking that it was a lost cause. I'm just glad that they're okay and did not get in a fight with this dude, and they enjoyed the movie.
It was a Friday night in October of 2015 when this happened. I was 18 and had just started my first semester at university. My roommate Zoe, who was 19, and I had been dying to escape campus after a long week of midterms and endless group projects.
I bet.
We didn't want to go clubbing or do anything wild, so we planned something simple: grab dinner and catch a movie in the town just outside campus. It was our go-to kind of night when we just wanted to breathe and not talk about deadlines for a bit. The place we picked was one of those little shopping strips with a bunch of restaurants lined up next to a small movie theater. The sushi spot we went to wasn't packed, but still busy enough. Zoe and I sat in a booth near the window, and I was facing the rest of the restaurant while she had her back to it. About halfway through our meal, as we were talking about a guy in her class who'd ghosted her mid-group project, I noticed this guy sitting solo in the next booth over. I hadn't seen him walk in, and from the looks of it, he hadn't ordered anything either. Just sitting there. No menu, no drink, nothing. Maybe waiting on someone. I didn't think much of it until we finished eating, paid, and headed next door to the theater. As far as I could tell, the guy never moved from that booth. But when we got in line for tickets, guess who I saw a few people ahead of us? Same guy, same gray hoodie, same red backpack, which he was holding kind of weirdly, like not wearing it, but gripping the top handle so it swung out beside him.
That's a little odd. He was at the food place where they were at. They ordered food, ate, paid for their meal, and got out of there. And he hasn't even ordered nothing, just sitting there. But then when they get to the movie theater, he's already there. That's a little fishy. It just seems like he was waiting for them to leave and then try to catch up to him. And I don't want to think about what he's got in that bag. He's probably got some sort of weapon like a gun in there. Probably planning on robbing or starting a whole shootout in there. You never know.
I remember thinking it was odd, because it almost looked like he didn't want it touching him. Zoe and I bought our tickets, skipped the snack line, and walked toward the ticket collector. Right after we handed ours over, I noticed the guy again, just ahead of us, shuffling through the hallway like he didn't know where he was going. Then he slowed way down near the end of the hall, like he was waiting. We passed by and turned into our theater. Turns out it was right at the corner, and as we opened the door, I saw him suddenly spin around and start walking back toward us. Inside the theater, we climbed to the very back row, the one with the little wall behind it, and sat dead center. Not even 5 minutes later, I spotted the same guy again, walking in and casually sitting about 4 or 5 rows below us, off to the side. Zoe hadn't noticed him yet since she never saw him in the restaurant and didn't catch him earlier in the hallway either. I leaned over and whispered, "Don't look right now, but that guy with the red backpack from the restaurant, he's here. I think he's been following us." She looked down casually a few minutes later and kind of froze. We watched the movie, although I honestly couldn't tell you what it was about. I spent most of the time scanning his silhouette to see if he moved or did anything. He didn't. Not once. Just sat there, weirdly still. When the credits rolled, we decided to wait. The theater was clearing out, and he was still down there, collecting his stuff slowly. Then, he suddenly looked straight up at us. Not just a glance, he held eye contact, especially with Zoe. I could feel the tension in the air as neither of them looked away. It lasted maybe 3 seconds, but it was enough to make my stomach clench. Once he finally turned away, we slipped out and made a beeline for the women's bathroom down the hall. We waited in there for what felt like forever, probably just under 10 minutes. When we finally peeked out into the lobby, he was standing outside the glass doors on the phone. We didn't stick around to see what he was doing. We booked it out a side door, ordered an Uber while walking, and passed behind him on our way to the car. He never turned around. Looking back, nothing explicitly threatening happened, but the whole night just doesn't sit right with me. He didn't order food, followed us to a movie theater without a clear reason, and somehow ended up sitting near us again inside. I've always wondered if he picked us out at random or had something planned. And I still think about that red backpack. Why carry it like that? Why bring it at all? Whatever the case, we definitely dodged something that night. I don't think it was just a coincidence.
No, it wasn't no coincidence. He probably picked you guys out while at the restaurant and then followed you into the movie theater. And once he saw you girls went to the bathroom, he probably wanted to make a phone call for a friend of his to help him, maybe. I don't know. But thank God they didn't get to find out, and they just hightailed it out of there before he decided to pull whatever was in that backpack out. But they really dodged a big bullet that night.
So this happened back in 2014 when my ex and I decided to catch a movie at the local Cineplex. We picked Edge of Tomorrow because, well, it looked cool. When we walked into the theater, it was pretty packed, but we managed to snag seats in the top row, right near the center for the best view. As we settled in, I noticed this guy who suddenly moved down to the aisle seat just a row below us. At first, I thought nothing of it because people were still coming in and finding their spots. But once the movie started, I caught him looking directly at me. I tried to brush it off and kept watching, but he didn't stop staring, so I gave him my best leave me alone glare. That's when he got up, walked down the aisle, and left the theater. A few minutes later, the same guy comes back from the other side of the theater, makes his way up the aisle, and sits right in the row just in front of us, exactly where he can keep an eye on both me and my ex. I was like, what the hell? Then he turns around in his seat, just staring without saying a word. My ex finally notices and asks him, "Can we help you with something?" And he just stays quiet. I was starting to get really uncomfortable and honestly annoyed, but I tried to ignore him and focus on the movie. Eventually, I whispered something like, "What's this guy's deal?" loud enough that some people around us heard. Still, he didn't care, kept staring without blinking. I finally told him outright to stop watching us and leave. We got a few shh looks from the crowd, but this guy just didn't care.
I know the other people are trying to enjoy the movie, but you should care if someone is making a scene happen. I mean, I would feel kind of disturbed if somebody kept staring at me for a long period of time and not watching the movie at all.
After about 20 minutes of this nonsense, my ex was freaked out and wanted to leave, which I agreed with, even though I was pissed off. Looking back, I know we should have told theater staff or security, but at the time, we just got up and walked out. My ex had to hit the restroom, so I waited in the lobby. Not long after we came out, that same guy appeared, noticed me, stopped for a second, and I was ready to confront him, but he just turned and walked outside. I followed my ex to the restroom, then we headed out. Once outside, I spotted him standing a little ways off to the left, while our car was parked to the right. I thought about calling him out again, but decided to just get the hell out of there. As we walked to the car, I saw him start trailing us, keeping a few feet behind. That's when I spun around, furious, and shouted something along the lines of, "What the hell do you want?" The guy stopped, smiled creepily, and I noticed he had a small camera, like a GoPro, recording us. I asked him why he was filming, but he just kept smiling and said nothing. It hit me then that we were exactly what he wanted, but I still didn't fully understand what his game was. My ex begged me to get in the car and leave, so we did. He kept following us, filming right up to the car next to ours. As we drove off, he gave us one last creepy smile. I worried after that if he was going to try to track us down using our license plate or something, but thankfully, nothing else happened. I've run into my share of weird people since then, But I think being younger and not knowing how to handle things like this made that night stick in my mind more than most.
Oh man, that wouldn't fly with me. If I saw somebody recording me without my consent, I would have been turning around, grabbing that guy's camera and calling the cops, have him questioned by them. And if he don't respond, throw his butt in jail. Because it just seems like he was just stalking them to begin with to annoy the crap out of them. And that's just wrong. I would have went to the theater's staff and told them about this guy. Then they would have had him banned from the property. But thank God he did not figure out where they lived at, this person said.
Back in September 2016, I decided to go see Blair Witch on opening day. I was 19 at the time. People often say I look younger than I actually am, which might explain why this whole experience stuck with me a little more than usual. I showed up at the theater alone, grabbed my ticket, and found my seat. A couple rows up from me was this guy who looked like he was in his late 30s or maybe early 40s. He wasn't doing anything that stood out, just sitting there quietly, so I didn't really think much about him. The movie played out, and honestly, I thought it was fine, but the guy clearly didn't agree. As the credits started rolling, he leans down toward me and says, with a bit of a southern drawl and slurred speech, "That was fucking dumb, wasn't it?" He held a bottle of vitamin water, but something about his eyes and the way he spoke made me suspect there was more than just water in that bottle. Not really wanting to get into a conversation, I just shrugged and said something like, "I thought it was all right." I hoped that would be the end of it, but he kept going, asking what I thought happened to the characters in the movie. I just played it cool and shrugged again, not wanting to get drawn in. He dropped the subject but didn't leave. When I started walking down the stairs, he followed. Halfway down, he starts talking about how he often goes to the movies alone now because his wife won't come with him anymore. He even mentioned he recently saw Sully by himself. I wasn't sure how to respond. It caught me off guard because it felt out of nowhere, and I didn't want to be rude, but I also wanted to get away. We exited the theater with a handful of other people. I pulled out my phone and pretended to text, hoping he'd take the hint and move on. He did walk a bit ahead, but then turned back around and asked me what time it was. I checked my phone and told him it was 6:10. He looked a little confused and asked if that was right. I said yes, and said goodbye, then made a quick exit toward my car. At first, I thought he was just a lonely guy, maybe a little drunk, trying to make conversation about the movie. But the way he mentioned his marriage felt strange. Like maybe he was trying to connect on some deeper level, or maybe even make a move. His mannerisms didn't help calm that suspicion. I never felt truly threatened. He was bigger and maybe intoxicated, but I'm in decent shape and figured I could handle myself if needed. Still, the whole thing left me feeling uneasy and kind of shaken. When I told my friends about it later, most of them said it sounded creepy. Looking back now, I'm not sure if I was just overly cautious or if something was really off about the way he acted. I guess I'm still trying to figure out what to make of it.
Trust me, you don't need to know what that guy was thinking about. He probably was drowning out his sorrows with alcohol hidden in a water bottle and watch a movie. But I had a feeling that he was trying to hit on some ladies to see if they would hang out with him. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like, subscribe, turn on post notifications for more Midnight Tales reactions like this. This has been another successful installment of the Tin Man Score channel. I'm your host, Jeffrey Tin Man Taylor. I say that's a wrap, and have a nice day, y'all.